Okay, thank you very much, colleague, for coming for this side event within the Cryosphere Pavilion. We are very pleased really to have you with us for this side event. As you saw within the video, this side event concerns the International Year 2025 for glacier preservation, which was declared by the UN General Assembly under the leadership, of course, of Tajikistan. We are very pleased to, as I said, to have you all. And also, as you have seen within the video, UNESCO and WMO were requested by the resolution to mobilize partners, UN agencies, stakeholders for the development of a clear roadmap and the implementation, of course, of the International Year and also the celebration of the related day. So this session aim really to galvanize, to mobilize partners to work together so that we can move forward towards the implementation of this International Year of Glaciers Preservation. We will have two panels before the panels, of course, we have opening ceremony, a rapid opening ceremony, and a keynote intervention. Then I will hand over to my colleagues from WMO and also my colleague Anil to moderate the two other sessions. So without further ado, I will want to call upon John Spanda for opening remark. John from WMO. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. It's one of those advantages or disadvantages coming from an African country where we can use our name in multiple ways and everybody will still understand. But it's good to be with you, colleagues. My name is Johan Stander, representing the WMO. And as indicated by the Chair, it's really an honor to work with UNESCO on this after the General Assembly made this announcement and also further indicating that the 21st of March, as of next year, will be an international year of the glaciers or the Cryosphere. What's even better about it is actually 2 days prior to the World Meteorological Organization's day, which is the 23rd of March. And, we can always use these as stepping stones into reaching what we would like to reach at the end of the day. And within our organization, we've already for years called upon our member states to make the observations and monitoring and forecasting of the glaciers important. Already at the second Congress of 1979 at the OMM, that was now the International Meteorological Organization, prior to us constituting our own convention 70 years later. We already called upon our member states to really do something and monitor the glaciers to a certain extent. And even now, at this year's Congress, going into our next financial period, we've introduced a new strategic objective 1.5, which focuses on the changes in the cryosphere and the downstream effects. So we're not only now looking at the cryosphere itself, but what are those downstream effects around the rivers, sea level rise, and our small island states. And that is a massive task. And we're all building this within the framework of early warning services for all. Almost want to say it's almost too little, too late. But we've got to start somewhere to make sure that we do something. We've already seen a 10% decrease of the cryosphere in Switzerland the last 2 years. And half of China have lost already their glaciers in the past 50 years. We cannot continue with this trend. I've heard that some African countries will also lose theirs in totality within the next 2 or 3 years. We've got to really work on this. Between the WMO and UNESCO, we've identified five objectives for implementation of the Year of the Glacier preservation. That is raising awareness, number 1, promote action, enhance scientific understanding, strengthen policy frameworks, and then strengthen the financial support. And very good to see the GCF here today in this road as we move forward. Colleagues, I really look forward into your deliberations and discussions today. We are there to work with UNESCO. Let us make sure that we provide our member states, but not only for them. Those people are at risk. Let's make sure that we provide something to make sure that we preserve our glaciers and that there is water tomorrow for those that follow us. It's not about us anymore. When I look at the room, most of us will retire within 10 years. What about our children and our grandchildren and those following us? We've got to make sure that we leave a legacy behind which they can be proud of. I thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you very much, John, and indeed looking forward for continuing our outstanding, long-standing partnership with WMO in supporting member states addressing this daunting challenge of glacier melting, accelerate melting. Unfortunately, we need to do something indeed. Now let's move to John, the other John Pomeroy from the University of Saskatchewan, also the chair of our new UNESCO water chair on water and climate change. John, you have.
Thank you. It's a great delight to be here, and I want to set the scientific stage for the very important year we have ahead for us and other things. And I want to recognize UNESCO chair at the University of Saskatchewan, but also the Global Water Futures program, which has helped so much with this. I'll jump to it. Why are we here? The high mountains are where humanity, the atmosphere, our ecosystems, our snow, ice, and water all come together in the headwaters that provide water for over half of humanity's population. And how we have managed mountain water in our irrigation areas actually goes back to development of our civilizations around the world in thousands of years ago. And it will mark how we get through the imminent problems that are coming from global warming and development. I'm going to, instead of giving you a global overview, you've perhaps seen a lot of that at this pavilion, which is great. I'm going to show you what's happening this year. This year, the global temperatures exceeded 1.5 degrees Celsius for a few months in the summer, the hottest perhaps in 120,000 years. How did it go? Well, in the Canadian Rockies, not very well. We had snow melt a month earlier. We had snowpacks hundreds of millimeters below normal, and that was just the start. And this is a time when Banff National Park was about 4.5 degrees warmer than its historical average at this time of year. So getting very similar to some of the worst case scenarios for the end of the century. What did that do to the glaciers? Well, the glaciers started their snowmelt in late April instead of normally the June period when that happens. Peyto Glacier, which is an international hydrological decade glacier. It is also part of WMO's Cryosphere Watch, and it is contributed to the World Glacier Monitoring Service as one of the longest studied glaciers in the world. Had a very, very bad year, as it has had for the last few years. Its last positive mass balance was 23 years ago, and so losing hundreds of meters over just a few years, and close to 30 meters elevation drop due to ice melt. So our observations there are showing that Peyto, like many other glaciers around the world, is on the way out already. What happens downstream from this? Well, the Bow River at Banff drains the Canadian Rockies and provides water for a vast agricultural region of semi-arid agriculture in Western Canada. As you can see, the gray zone is the normal flows for that river. Blue is what happened this last year. Stream flow peaked a month early, then dropped below normal. Bow River at Banff is as it comes out of the mountains. As it leaves the irrigation districts is the lower graph, where the flows were 1/10 of normal through much of the summer. These are the lowest stream flows ever recorded, and the records go back to 1909. So we have an unmitigated hydrological disaster for this region. It supplies food and irrigation and water supply for major cities throughout Western Canada. Also, these rivers flow north, some of them, and the Peace, Athabasca, Mackenzie flows were exceptionally low, leading to the lowest water levels ever recorded on Great Slave Lake, one of the world's giant freshwater bodies, and flows on the Mackenzie River so low that barges could not reach the Western Arctic settlements for their annual resupply. So our International Year for Glaciers Preservation, we absolutely need it, and we need to find solutions for this deglaciating future. The impacts may be more to the loss of snow than to the loss of glaciers, but the glaciers are the indicator of the change which is occurring, and permafrost is part of that mix as well. So solutions, one is we need observations. We need to be able to measure, or we cannot manage these changes. The INARCH is a program of the World Climate Research Program, and it's a network of 60 observatories around the world to help measure in high mountain systems changes to the cryosphere, snow ice, human systems, water systems. Predictions. I'll see if I can get this to these. This is a high resolution snow redistribution and melt model we developed at the University of Saskatchewan, running over millions of square kilometers in Western Canada and now Chile. Our ambition is to run this for the world. And we can provide predictions down to 50 meters in high mountain terrain, which is unprecedented. So it's predictions like that that will help us manage these things with forecasts. of what's coming down the pipe. And working with people to protect, we have to engage with society, we have to influence policy, we have to make sure those solutions are suitable for communities and have full community engagement, including with indigenous communities. This is absolutely crucial. These solutions for food production are similarly crucially important and require long-term engagement with food producers downstream and with those high mountain communities that are so directly impacted. So we have a choice. We can choose the better future. We can observe, predict, or protect. Or if we fail to mitigate and adapt, the artist Gennady Ivanov has visualized a very grim picture there of Dubai, rather underwater from the melt of global ice sheets, which is the next phase, the Greenland and Antarctic ice sheets after the mountain glaciers. So we can still turn that around and not have that future, and we have to make sure we do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jean Pomara, for this rapid overview of what's currently going on in Canada, which is a good example of what you have been doing within your university, and indeed observe, predict, and protect by mobilizing communities who are living the reality of the changing of the glaciers. Thank you for that. Now, before starting the two high-level panel, I want to give the floor to my colleague Kuhn to provide us a rapid overview of the already proposed potential roadmap for the international year.
Morning to you all. I think Johan and John have actually put the challenges quite clear for us, and of course the international year serves to really address them. And I just want to quickly go through the concept note of the international year, how we perceive it at this point and how we want to modify it moving forward, but also on the roadmap for implementation. So again, Johan already alluded to the 5 objectives for the international year: to raise awareness, promote action, enhance scientific understanding, strengthen policy frameworks, but also looking at strengthening financial support for implementation. So really, we're looking at launching a global campaign for International Year of Glacier Preservation that will start slowly during 2024 and will find its height during 2025. But again, we will start that in the next few months already. Of course, one of the highlights will be the International Conference on Glacier Preservation that will be held in Tajikistan to share knowledge, best policies and practices, but also looking at facilitating dialogue among policymakers, scientists, civil society, and relevant stakeholders. Of course, we want to make sure regions are on board, and we aim to really have regional workshops to make sure that all regions have activities running throughout the year, and also focus on capacity building programs, workshops, and capacity and knowledge sharing platforms. But research and monitoring is key, and I think also John alluded to that. We need to know more about our glaciers, need to know what the impact is and how we can mitigate the impacts as well. So this really has to be a focal area of our work in 2025. And again, also policy advocacy is key, and hear about integration of glacier preservation considerations into climate change adaptation strategies, but also policies to address disaster risk reduction. And then, of course, partnerships with you all here in the room and outside of this room is key to really make sure we're all on board and to make sure we connect to other frameworks that are out there, such as the 5 years of action for the development of the mountain regions. And fundamentalization will be key, and I'm very happy to have here today also international climate funds such as GCF, GHF, as well as Adaptation Fund, to talk about how can these funds be more allocated towards the challenges related to glacier melt. And of course, we need to coordinate as well. And I think the last few months, we've been trying to come up with a framework in which we can collaboratively address all those challenges. And in this sense, we had a first brainstorming session a few months ago at UNESCO, together with WMO, where we had more than 100 participants from 16 countries identifying how we would move forward towards 2025 International Year. And these months, of course, we have several sessions here at COP. I think there's 3 sessions specifically for the International Year. And then, of course, we'll build into the setup of an advisory board starting early next year and making sure that everybody who would like to contribute is able to participate in International Year. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kuhn. I think we have now a rapid overview of what are we aiming today, but we'll go deeper now in terms of discussions. So we start with one of the high-level session, which will be moderated by Nicholas.
we'll try to set up some chairs here in the front.
Okay.
So we put our panelists in the front. We have 6 distinguished panelists from different countries, which I'll please ask you to come forward to this. Perfect. Thanks.
Thank you.
I would like to use some of those slides.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Johan, for everything. Really well done. Good. We're still missing.
Is this where permafrost is, or
Cryosphere Pavilion, yeah.
well, I'm supposed to be a panelist on permafrost.
What's your name, please, sir?
Chief Gary Harrison.
At what time, you know?
Noon,
Not here now, I think. No?
noon here.
Next session, probably.
Next issue.
Yeah, we are ongoing right now.
Okay. You're telling you it's money.
But we're still missing, so we have, okay, I'll get our panel started. So thank you very much for coming here. And now we will start with the first high level panel on the country perspectives on challenges and solutions. Our distinguished panelists are from different parts of the world, all united through their glaciers. I would say I'll take it from the mountains in Pakistan to the Alps in France, the highlands in Iceland, and the Himalayas in Bhutan and Nepal. I think we're still missing our colleague from Iceland, but I hope she's actually joining, I think, virtually, right? Good. So let's start first with our representative from Tajikistan, Mr. Sanoy Boysoda, the representative of the Executive Committee of the International Fund for Saving the Aral Sea. As we all know, over 90% of Tajikistan is a mountainous region, and they are struggling, as many other regions of the world, with the increasing temperatures. So without further ado, to save us some time, I'll give the floor to Sanoy. Sanoy, please give us a little bit of an overview of the implications that the increasing glacier melts are having in the society of Tajikistan. What does this mean for your hydropower production, agricultural systems, the downstream population? And of course, we're thankful for Tajikistan's leadership in conveying the International Year of Patience 2025. Sanoy, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. Taking this opportunity, I would like to thank WMO and UNESCO for organizing this important event towards implementation of the International Year of Glacier Preservation. As you might know, 8% of the territory of Tajikistan is covered by glaciers and snow, and they are forming a microclimate. They regulate hydrological regime of our rivers, and 80% of annual flow of our rivers is formed by melting glaciers and snow. And climate change, under the climate change impact, they are rapidly melting, and for last 50, 60 years, we have lost almost 30% of our glaciers, and about more than 1,000 small and mid-sized glaciers. Of course, they are providing water for our drinking water supply, for irrigation, for hydropower energy producing, and the consequence of the melting glaciers and ice for the short-term period will be increasing in frequency and strength of water-related disasters such as glacial lake outburst floods, mud flows, and other water-related disasters. And for the long-term period, it will impact in increasing in decreasing water availability for irrigation, for hydropower, and it will have devastating consequences for social for our society and for our economic growth. Uh, and to address these challenges, we have identified, uh, our government has identified these issues as one of its priorities, and we have already started our activities towards mitigation and adaptation to these changes. And the first of our activities is, as was mentioned by John, it's awareness raising. People must be well informed, and we are organizing big company towards raising awareness of population, and also we are we are enhancing our capacity to observe, to monitor, and to research glaciers. And a few years ago, it was established National Glacial Center, and which, with the partnership with our partners, uh, cooperate and organize different kind of studies or researches to better understand the process which is going on, and to provide more scientific based evidence, based solutions, findings. And also we are enhancing the capacity of our hydromet service, in order to be capable to focus those extreme weather events which are related to climate change, to melting glaciers, and to weather. And also, we in order to mitigate the consequences of glacial melting, we are also implementing infrastructural projects like building water storages, building dams for protection from disasters related to glacial melting, and other infrastructural projects. And of course, it's impossible to directly preserve glaciers, but we are also trying to to contribute to decreasing the carbon emissions through, one of example could be building hydropower stations, which of course can reduce the number of emissions, carbon emissions. And we're sure that through such kind of activities we can contribute towards mitigation and adaptation to glacial melting and climate change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Samuel, for sharing the experiences of Tajikistan, and of course the need for adaptation, but of course also mitigation. Right? We have to try to keep global warming below 1.5, although even 1.5 degrees is too hot, as we see here on this panel. Next, I would like to give the floor to our representative from France. Before, just I forgot to mention at the beginning, we have about 3 to 4 minutes for everyone. I'll have a little alarm here just to alert you when the time is running out, so we stick on time. But yes, so next I would like to give the floor to Mr. Paul Bertrand Barré, the Special Envoy to the French Minister of Europe and Foreign Affairs and the Secretary General to the One Planet Summit. Mr. Paul Bertrand, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, and thank you to the UNESCO and the WMO for organizing these side events. Of course, France hosts a lot of glaciers, as you know, not only in the Alps, also in the Pyrenees between France and Spain. And the impacts are there already very visible. This is one of the reasons why during the One Planet Polar Summit that we organized in Paris a few weeks ago, we set up, and we organized it, by the way, with the UNESCO and the WMO, we set up a scientific advisory board to try to update the knowledge about this challenge of melting glacier. And larger than that, about the challenge of a melting cryosphere. It delivered an updated report on the cryosphere that clearly shows that the glacier mass loss was around 20% higher between 2021 and 2022 than over the whole of the last decade. Cumulative thickness loss of mountain glaciers in the 70s averages almost 30 meters. So scientists predict that with an increase of temperatures to 1.5 degrees, that half of today's glacier will disappear in the course of the 21st century. So these changes, as already said, have huge impacts on nature, of course, but also on the economic activities of our people in those regions. And we feel it in France, where we can also already observe impacts on the touristic activities, on the economic activities. And this led France to, beyond the observation, to take strong action. And during the One Planet Polar Summit, President Macron declared that we should protect all our glaciers. Today, around 60% of our glaciers are covered in terms of natural protection, natural parks and so on. And we will extend this coverage to 100% in the years to come. That is a decision that has been made. Of course, we have to, and the representative of Tajikistan rightly underlines this, we have to cope with the carbon emissions. That's the first priority, but we also should also try to do our best in terms of protection of the areas of glacier. Of course, we'll participate actively in the International Year of the Glacier under the leadership of Tajikistan by 2025. But the question of the glacier should be envisaged as part of a broader question, a broader challenge, that is a question of the cryosphere. And therefore, we proposed, and it was endorsed by more than 30 countries, to an international organization in Paris at the Polar Summit. We propose to envisage and to work together in the weeks to come, in the months to come, towards a decade of glacier and polar sciences. That will be an opportunity starting from the 2025 and ending by 2035. So starting with the year of the glacier, that will be an opportunity to gather financings, gather goodwillings, to strengthen the international scientific cooperation in this field, where it is so much needed. Let me say also a word maybe on other aspects of the cryosphere melting impacts in France. That is a question also for us of the sea level rise that we start observing, and that will have an impact on our coastal regions. So that is a very serious question that more and more we are taking into account in our policies, for example, by setting up a network of coastal region observatories. So, because at this stage, we must admit that there is a lack of knowledge about the impacts, and that there is a lack of knowledge about the financial impacts specifically. So that's a question that we are looking very closely at, but also in a more international perspective, as it is an international challenge and not only a challenge for this country or another one, we launched at Paris, at the One Planet Polar Summit, a network of cities and regions and local collectivities that are facing this challenge commonly. And this network is now will be built in the months to come and will be finalized at the occasion on the occasion of the Nice United Nations Sea conference by June 2025, the so-called UNOC, where under the leadership of the mayor of Nice, Mr. Estrosi, this network will be consolidated to try to find common solutions, common financing in front of this challenge. And a last word also to say that there are other aspects of the acceleration of the cryosphere that are of interest to France, as France is very much involved in the Antarctic region. We have a scientific basis there. We are a member of the Antarctic Treaty, as you may know, and we are sadly observing the impact on biodiversity of the melting. And for example, the impact on the emperor penguins, regeneration, reproduction, that is hugely at stake in the context of this acceleration of the melting of the cryosphere. So from these observations, and just to conclude, we also drew a national strategy that was announced by President Macron in Paris recently, which will really put emphasis on mobilizing more money for the science, which is priority number one, 1 billion for the national French efforts in the field of science of the cryosphere. We will renovate our scientific base of Dumont-Durville in Antarctic, for example. And as I said, we will improve the coverage, the protection of our national glacier as part of this effort. And last point, there is also a challenge about the regions, the lands that are being freed by the recession of the glacier. There is a new biodiversity emerging there, so there is a new challenge for protection that is also a post-glacial question that has to be addressed, and we are developing in this regard a national biodiversity program that will try to address this specific post-glacial question. Because there is not only bad news, there is also good news. We have to try to see them, and in this regard, the development of a new biodiversity in these regions freed by the glacier has also to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barrett. It's really great that we have friends on board and sharing the knowledge and expertise, investing so much in science and research. There's a lot to be done, and good to also see the leadership at the highest level. Next, I would like to give the floor to our panelists from Nepal, Mr. Sushil Chandra Tiwari, the Water and Energy from the Water and Energy Commission Secretariat of the Government of Nepal. Mr. Tiwari, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. It's my great pleasure to be in front of you from the country, Nepal, which has the highest mountain in the world, Mount Everest. And though the country is small, but we have almost about more than 70% of the area covered by the mountains, actually. And we have major three basins, Kosi, Gandaki, and Karnali, which is the major source of water for the Indus, Ganges, and Brahmaputra in India. And actually, this is the source, freshwater source of the 2 billion people downstream in the region, actually. And also, the country contains significant portion of the Hindu-Kush Himalayas, which is also the major source of fresh water for Asia. So actually, because of the climate change, the country is facing, we are witnessing several problems already there, like especially the water availability in those major rivers basin is decreasing year by year, actually. And because of that, our country as well as the many fertile lands in the downstream, they are affecting from water scarcity for irrigation, actually. And these are also source for the fresh water supply for drinking as well as sanitation also for the people living around. And they are also suffering significantly. And similarly, Nepal, we have also have a huge potential for hydropower, which is actually the renewable energy that can contribute for the mitigation of climate change in the region as well as in the world also. So for that also, the hydropower sector is also being more mostly affected by this kind of effects on the uh, mountain ice reserve in the glaciers, actually. And from the past 30 years, we have experienced that almost about 25% of the glaciers have been decreased in the past 30 years. And the area, actually, the number of glacier lakes is increasing by 11% because of the uh, formation of different small lakes because of the melting of the glaciers. Because of those scenarios, we are also facing many water-induced disasters, especially the landslides and floods in the plain area. Every year, because we have a serious damage to the life of the people as well as the property and infrastructure. And actually, for the conservation of these glaciers, actually, we have make some initiation and support from like UNDP also to identify those critical or dangerous glaciers. And up to now, that we have been identified that about 47 numbers of glaciers are most dangerous. And we are also trying to analyze the impacts that are going to be happen due to the glacier melting on those impacts. But the real problem that we are facing is that actually the lack of actually the glacier areas is more or less more inaccessible area. They are not in easier access, so we need to have some kind of technology how we can identify like remote sensing or modern technology to identify those dangerous or potentially dangerous glaciers. And the other things we need to know the technology, how can we preserve or how can we mitigate the impact of the melting of those glaciers? That is another thing. And the other things we are also trying to focus on increase the generation of our hydropower so that it can contribute for the global impact of climate change, including the melting of glaciers that can also contribute. Similarly, we are trying to have some kind of collaboration with the international partners also to work, to collaborate in those areas so that that can be easier for us to identify, to prioritize those glaciers and to mitigate the impacts that we can have from this kind of effects. So these are the major situation and the major challenges that we are facing because Nepal is being a developing country actually, or at least developed countries. So we need to enhance our capacity, enhance our knowledge, enhance our technology, as well as we need to have some kind of financial support also for those kind of mitigation measures. So we actually look forward to collaborate with those countries, or we look forward to have some kind of networking for those with those countries which are facing the similar types of problems, and also to look forward to have more cooperation from the international partners also to have collaboration in those areas because this is a highly sensitive area, not only for the region, for the country, but for the whole region and for the whole globe. So it should be the concern of the whole globe, whole region also. So in this aspect, and I look forward to have more collaboration in the coming days, like in the 2025. This is the International Year of Glacier Preservation. So we need to work more on these areas, and we need to increase our collaboration, increase our technology, increase our knowledge, always as we need to invest more from the development partners actually. So with this, I would like to conclude my remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tiwari, and it's really good that you really highlighted the issue of technology, and accessibility of these areas, and how we are going to overcome that, and sharing those technologies and knowledges. And of course, we'll need the financial resources for that, which we'll tackle in the second panel. So thank you very much also for Nepal's leadership and collaboration. Next, I would like to give the floor to a neighboring country of Nepal, our representative from Bhutan, Mr. Karma Glaciologist. Sorry for that. At the National Center for Hydrology and Meteorology of the Royal Government of Bhutan. Mr. Karma, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nicholas. Thank you, WMO and UNESCO for letting me be a part of this discussion. I think I come from a country which is located in the easternmost part of the Himalayas, east to Nepal. I think everybody knows Nepal, but most of you may not be knowing Bhutan if I say Bhutan. So it's always better to give a reference first and then tell the name of the country. So I always get this difficulty in locating my country to the audience. So anyway, I don't have much to add on our problems and issues on what we are facing regarding the glaciers in Bhutan, apart from what my Nepal colleague has already highlighted. But what I would like to highlight here is Bhutan is a very small country. It's just 38,000 square kilometers with 700,000 people. And there are around 700 glaciers in Bhutan, which are not really doing well. So since we are located in the easternmost part of the Himalayas, our glaciers behave very differently with the glaciers from elsewhere in the world. So we have our own issues regarding the geographical location of our in our region. So that is why, like most of the glaciers now in Bhutan, if you look at, they fall below the ELA, the equilibrium line of altitude, which means that most of them will disappear by any means if the current trend of climate continues for another few decades. So that is the fact that what IPCC report, the special report on cryosphere and ocean, also pointed out. And even if you go through this, the Paris, the most ambitious Paris agreement of 1.5, I don't think we will be able to do much to save these the smaller glaciers in our region. So connected to this one, what we are facing now, like we are just 700,000 people in the country, and more than 50% of the population, their livelihood is agriculture, which is a water-intensive sector. The other one is our economy depends mostly on hydropower generation, which are almost all located in the big river valleys downstream. And hydropower contributes more than 40% annually to our economy. So this is how sensitive we are actually. So at the source, the glaciers are receding. Almost all the river systems in Bhutan, they have their origin from the glaciers and snowfields in the north. So the retreating rate of glaciers in Bhutan is around 16 meters for the smaller glaciers per year. And for the larger debris covered glacier is around 30 to 35 meters. So just imagine what will be the situation in the next few decades. So associated with this on the risks is now the meltwater contribution to river systems in Bhutan. We have some scientific data coming out, which ranges from 33% to 49%. So that is a lot, although this may vary in time and space, but on the average, they contribute around 33 to 49%. So what will we do with all those mega hydropower projects located in the downstream region if there is no sufficient water in the rivers? So currently we are facing a lot of electricity problem especially during the lean season. We are in a state that we have to import electricity from India during the lean season. So I'll not highlight about the issues on the agriculture sector. What will happen if you look at the literatures and the numbers that are coming out in the journals, you'll see that Bhutan is one of the water-rich countries in South Asia. Our per capita water is around 94,000 liters. But that is just a literature. If you go to the ground and see the reality, it's totally different. Because the big rivers are not actually, they're only the hydropower plants are benefited by the big rivers because it flows at the bottom of the valley. People are living on the terraces, on the slopes of the Himalayan region. So all those streams, most of the streams, the tributaries are what is actually benefiting the communities and their livelihoods. And unfortunately, all those streams, most of the stream sources are drying up. We have the issue with the stream sources drying up. The tributaries, hydrological regimes are being, deteriorating hydrological regimes. And on top of that, our glacier, the debris cover glaciers, the huge valley type debris cover glaciers are resetting at around 30 to 35 meters per annum, causing a lot of problem with the glacial lake outburst flood. So that is what we are facing as an issue and problem in the eastern part of the Himalayas. Well, now what we have done a lot of things actually. We have went to the extent of with the international collaboration. We have went to the extent of mitigating those lakes, bringing down the water level in the lakes to bring down the hazard from those lakes in the downstream region. We have installed early warning system in those block-prone river basins. We have come up with a hazard zonation map for the communities in the downstream region so that they are well informed on the hazards associated with glacial lake outburst flood upstreams. But are these measures enough? I'll deny it, frankly, because what we have done is just a small part of what we should be doing. Bringing down the water level in a big glacial lake in the upstream at the source by 5 meters results only to draining out the water by around 17 million cubic meters of water. Well, if I cite one of the example, in 1994, there was a huge block from one of the glacial lakes, and that is 18 million cubic meters water. We should be doing more, and to do more, we need access to resources, the financial resources. When I say access to resources, I'm just highlighting easy access to financial resources. There are resources, but to access it is very, very difficult right now. We need access to the emerging technologies to gather more scientific data in the Himalayas. I think that is where I'll stop for now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Khan, for elaborating the challenges and the solutions that Bhutan is working towards. I know we could continue talking about the subject for hours, for days, and I encourage participants to reach out to the speakers after this session to continue the discussions, and we'll of course provide more opportunities in the days and in the years to come. And of course, we'll have now also a decade of Glaciers, so it's good to hear that. So for that, regard, I would say let's move forward to the next panel. Thank you very much. A big hand of applause to my colleague Anil from UNESCO to see, okay, how are we going to now mobilize the funds?
Definitely. Yeah, in the audience, make some announcements. So I want to invite our next panelist, Isabella Koziel, Deputy Director General from ICIMOD, Mr. Kevin Forsberg from Green Climate Fund, Ms. Pam Pearson, Director of International Cryosphere Climate Initiative. Pam, thank you for hosting us. Carolina Adler, Executive Director, Mountain Research Institute. Mr. Chewang Dorji, Global Environment Fund, if he's here. Mr. Gustav Huzius, let's see here. Muhammad Ashioti, yeah. Adaptation Fund. Yes. So I mentioned that we are going to also make some announcement. The announcement is on 15th of December in New York, member states are going to establish or launch Friend of Glacier at the highest level. So what a distinguished speaker from Bhutan said, perhaps we can raise this voice and get to that level. And also now, what you mentioned about scientific literature, you refer to some of the IPCC report, special report. We have some of the speaker actually. Carolina is the lead author of that chapter. So probably she will reflect some of your points. Let me just organize myself to. So with this, this session will discuss about mobilizing resources, solution to support International Year on Glacier Preservation. I would like to start with Isabella, and congratulations. Today ICIMOD is celebrating 40th anniversary, and she is here celebrating with us. UNESCO is proud to be one of the founding members of ICIMOD. So what is the importance of International Year of Glacier Preservation 2025 in the context of melting Cryosphere? Of course, for its reason you have heard, and how ICIMOD see its contribution to International Year. If you can give your insight in 4 minutes, please.
So, thank Okay, so I'll speak to this. I hope I accept your, yeah, okay. So thank you very much. And yes, we are 40 years old today. So that is also an extraordinary achievement because we bring together the 8 countries of the Hindu Kush, Himalaya, stretching from Afghanistan in the west to Myanmar in the east. Of course, Nepal and Bhutan are here today, who are our members. Were hosted in Kathmandu in Nepal by the government of Nepal. And you will have heard already, and I won't repeat some of the terrifying statistics that we have in terms of what is happening to our cryosphere. But what I just really want to stress is that this is a region that is home to 250 million people, and there's up to 1.62 billion people who rely on the water and the resources of this region. So when things go wrong, there are millions, potentially over 1 billion people who are at risk. We also know that even this year, during the monsoonal period, 2,000 people have lost their lives. Millions of dollars of investment have been wiped out, and these countries have contributed least to the crisis that they are now bearing the brunt of the costs of. So it's fantastic to know of the International Year. And so there are many areas which we can contribute to moving forward. So of course, sharing the science that we have, synthesizing the science of the region at a regional level is one area that we can provide support on, particularly in terms of what are the hazards and the risks moving forwards, both to countries, to communities, and investments. We can also, of course, provide support at the regional level in terms of bringing our regional member countries together. We have a proposal on the table at the moment, which is to establish an HKH Council. So this will be debated by our Hindu Kush Himalaya ministers in March next year. And one of the groups within that will be on cryosphere. We can host science policy dialogues within the auspices of that council if it's approved, or if otherwise we can help convene and host the regional dialogues. We're also proposing that we could have a tribute to one of the disappearing glaciers. So we could propose to do a tribute to Yala Glacier. At first we thought we could perhaps have a funeral, but perhaps that's too pessimistic. Although when I have been recently to Khumbu region in Nepal and to Jigme Dorji National Park in Bhutan, when you get to 4,500, 5,000 meters, it's staggering. You can see all around you how many glaciers have disappeared. But we would offer that as well. So those are some of the areas that we could provide some support.
Thank you very much. Yeah, you stayed 2 seconds within the margins. So thank you so much. We saved that time for the Q&A. And there are lots of offer from ISIMOD. So let's part your question, how to really implement those offer. Let me go to Green Climate Fund. Kevin, how do you see the opportunity for the agency like Green Climate Fund to support these activities that has been just laid out by member states, but also from the international organization ISIMOD? How do you see the opportunity and partnership? How do you see that we can really work together? And also, please, 4 minutes.
Thank you very much. So we've heard this week here at COP, and not for the first time, that the 1.5 degrees target of the Paris Agreement is hanging by a thread. The latest analysis by IPCC suggests that if we want to keep that target in sight for 2030, it's going to require a 43% reduction of emissions. So do we need. And we've heard from other speakers the rate at which glaciers have been reducing and or even losing their existence over the last decade. And it's true that adaptations and losses and damages are always concentrated amongst the most vulnerable populations. And once we get above 1.5 degrees of warming, limited freshwater resources pose hard adaptation limits. And at that point, some ecosystem-based adaptation measures, which we support through many of our projects, they become impossible and ineffective. So as the world's largest climate fund, our mission is to help developing countries transition to low-emission, climate-resilient economies. At the moment, as of our last board meeting, the GCF has approved $13.5 billion worth of projects being delivered in 129 developing countries. And I can talk about some of those previous projects and how they impact on glacial regions, and then very briefly talk about our future strategic plan. So one of our earliest projects was to scale up measures to reduce glacial lake first floods, BLOFs, in northern Pakistan, where the melting of the Hindu Kush, Karakoram and Himalayan glaciers have created some 3,000 glacial lakes in northern Pakistan. And when those lakes burst, that's obviously very hazardous. There are 33 of these lakes, and they can release millions of cubic meters of water in just a few hours. You cause massive destruction and tremendous risk to life and property and livelihoods. So that project, one of our earliest projects, in fact, is building 250 engineering structures, dams, ponds, spillways, as well as ecosystem-based measures around tree plantation and drainage management, as well as strengthening disaster risk management policies and implementing early warning systems. And that's an adaptation project, but clearly there's a lot of relevance to mitigation here as well, and we've heard some of those aspects. Another of our projects in Tajikistan is contextualized with hydropower, because hydropower provides something like 98% of energy, I believe. And obviously, as the climate warms, and all climate models agree upon this, significant changes in the fluxes of water are going to have huge implications, both in the short and the long term for power within Tajikistan and any other country with the same reliance. So one of our projects is modernizing hydropower in the region, protecting it against future climate conditions, as well as allowing the relevant agencies and ministries to manage those climate risks and provide structural rehabilitation to optimize resilience to climate change. And I think this is a great time to remind everyone that for glaciers, just like for the oceans, in terms of sea level rise, as well as ocean acidification, there is no alternative to mitigating carbon dioxide emissions. It's only deep and immediate cuts that are going to reach these net zero targets, and only that is going to save glaciers, and only that is going to save the oceans from irreversible sea level rise. Because just like the ocean, glaciers have long memories, and even if we were to stop that now, the heat that's already in the system, over and above the heat of pre-industrial, will still be causing losses. So mitigation must never be forgotten, even though adaptation is extremely important. As we go into our new, what we call our new strategic plan, 2024 to 27, we're still committed to maintaining a 50-50 balance between adaptation and mitigation. And I'll just speak very briefly to some of the specific targets in that new strategic plan for 24 to 27. We're targeting between 50 to 60 new and enhanced early warning systems for vulnerable countries. On ecosystems, we're looking to support countries to protect and restore between 120 to 200 million hectares of terrestrial or marine ecosystems. And we're also looking to bring something like 40 to 70 projects specifically for adaptation. And I'm delighted to say that during the course of this week, very generous pledges from our donor countries bring the GCF2 replenishment up to $12.8 billion. So we look forward to having the opportunity for partnering in the year of the glacier and hopefully the decade of the glacier as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We with the WMO, we look opportunity to help member states to materialize some of the possible funding venues so that lives and livelihood, as mentioned by distinguished delegates in the earlier session, can be saved and adapted accordingly. Now we will move from the. I would like to hear a little bit of science now. And I'm looking at Carolina, who was the lead author, IPCC's special book, special chapter that you refer to, Ocean and Cryosphere. So what is the perspective from Scientific Coordination Organization, Mountain Research Institute? How do you see how we need to mobilize scientific community to address these challenges, but also to work together for the funding opportunities? Carolina, 4 minutes.
Thank you very much, Anil. Thank you for the opportunity to also discuss a bit more about how could we imagine the coordination of scientific research around the world. The MRI has been around now for 20 years, and we've been contributing very much to assessments through census work. But one of the things that the International Year provides is also an opportunity to redefine a scientific agenda that also places an emphasis on the future. So how do we reimagine and not only improve our forecasting and predictions abilities, but also the type of science that engages with foresight, that engages with scenarios, to plan for the changes that are unfortunately inevitable. It is important, of course, to engage in observations. We need to continue the effort to improve the networked approach to observations in mountains and the cryosphere around the world. And this is, of course, important for glaciers as well. But alongside that, we also need to be looking at those other aspects of scientific activity. And this is also the realm of the social sciences. And this is also an important opportunity for the humanities and social sciences to link some of these questions and research agendas going forward. And complement and support the instrument-based observations and the types of biophysical sciences that we need to also inspire and move forward solutions. So MRI has just been given the opportunity through the Swiss Academy of Sciences to continue for a next phase in its 4-year work plan. So we are looking forward to now implement that. But having said that, also to engage in the priorities and new research questions that the year will also inspire us to engage in, to incorporate that as part of that planning. So it's very early in the piece, so this is a really unique opportunity. Another opportunity that we have is confirmation from the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, SDC, funding the global program Adaptation and Altitude. Again, there we have been approved for another 4 years worth of funding for the second phase of this program. Again, this is a great opportunity to see those projects that already have funding secured to perhaps redistribute and redefine some of those priorities to also support and contribute to the observance of the International Year. So there are two aspects here that we need to also consider for the International Year. On the one hand, we have many research institutes, research communities, research groups that have committed, they have a work plan already in place. And so it's how do we engage them to ensure that those contributions are also captured by what the International Year is trying to achieve. So it was very good to hear that the expression of interest will come online very soon, because that is a good opportunity early in the piece to take stock of activities that are already being planned. The second aspect around this is, yes, there are activities that need to be implemented and engage as part of the international year itself. But what happens after the year? So what are the key outcomes of the year? What are the key proposals that we can also engage as an outcome of the year? We've heard of the proposal of the decade for science. This is a very encouraging signal, because that will provide a platform to continue this work over a considerable time into the future. And one final thing that I would like to also mention, and it relates to the intervention made by the representative from France about the post-glacial aspects that we also need to consider. Yes, indeed, biodiversity and the new species that are literally being unveiled in front of our eyes are also a threat and an opportunity, but we also need to think about the governance aspects. The human dimension and the land use changes and opportunities to utilize that space, and that is also something that we need to be thinking about, and that is something that the NRI is looking to focus attention on that level. Thank you.
Indeed, UNESCO and WMO, we will be calling for expression of interest. And this is a community. I mean, it's not only us, it's all of us together. So we will work together to make year successful, but also we will look towards a decade. And some of the things that you highlighted, research cooperation, research questions that needs to be answered. And UNESCO, particularly a science organization of the United Nations system, we are very much interested to work together with you. And we have a UNESCO chair also sitting, so we can really create a great coalition. Next, let me move to the host of this pavilion, PAM, who has been hosting Cryosphere Pavilion, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I have not attended, but since Madrid I attended, and I was part of this Cryosphere Pavilion. So how do you see PAM? And you've been hearing all the time Cryosphere voices, how really we need to now mobilize these stakeholders coming to this pavilion to make year successful, but not only limited. We are also going for the PAM.
Well, I think, and thank you for coming here. Those of you who've been at past pavilions, we have tended to have a little bit better space, but we've made do. And we really do appreciate your flexibility in coming here. And, you know, these events, one of the advantages of being here is at least they are recorded. And so people will be able to watch them after the fact, and that at least is fairly good quality. Because really mountains in cryosphere and their impacts are spread around the world. I think that is the thing that I'll focus on, because there have been so many good points made here, but that the impacts from loss of mountain cryosphere are really regional, and in many countries without mountains, in many countries that would never see snow. And that is one of the reasons that we together with Chile and Iceland are working hard, especially here at this COP, to try to draw those connections for governments through the Ambition on Melting Ice high-level group, which will have a ministerial meeting next week on the 9th, where we hope that actually some of the countries, I will not point to you, will join, but we recognize France for having joined and really motivated other countries to join at the One Planet Polar Summit, which was very much most welcome. But the point of AMI is to make that connection, number one. And number two, to raise at that very high level, as well as to the general public, that the changes occurring to glaciers, as was mentioned earlier, are largely irreversible unless we mitigate in accordance really with the 1.5 degree goal. There can be a brief overshoot, but the more and more the scientific community is studying what is happening to these glaciers, the more that they see not only that much higher than that causes much greater loss, but again, that loss is irreversible. Can you grow a glacier back? Yes, but it takes, when we first started doing this decades, we were saying, Now the scientists are saying not just hundreds of years, but thousands of years. They grow back very, very slowly. And the science is moving incredibly quickly on this, and that needs to be transmitted. So, one of the things that we've been doing also since Madrid are the State of the Cryosphere reports. So these are coming out every year, and they're coming out every year, and they're peer reviewed. About half of the reviewers are actually IPCC authors. Carolina is one of them. Miriam Jackson from ICIMOD, also an IPCC author, is another. Is to convey the rapidity of this science. And the summary is it's happening faster and at lower temperatures than we thought. Observations in almost all cryosphere are running ahead of projections. And that's a really important message to get out. I apologize for sitting here tapping, but we're trying to get this into the covers decision and to the GST. And having coordination meetings, and I think I will end with that, because that meeting that we're hoping to have a little bit later this afternoon to coordinate the countries interested. Yeah, lots of mountain countries. Bhutan has confirmed that it will be there, and Chile will chair along with Iceland. But we're also having coastal countries that are coming because they find themselves just as concerned with what is happening, and downstream countries like Bangladesh, another member of ICIMOD. And so this is the message that really needs to get out there, that these losses are permanent, largely irreversible, and we really need to mitigate at the same time as we plan for what we must with adaptation. If you go to the exhibit Cryosphere Pavilion, and I'll end with this because it's a message of caution and hope, there is an animation that is running there, one of many, that shows the Great Alleged Glacier in Switzerland, and there's so much heat built up into the system that it makes no difference whether you have low or high emissions. Those two simulations are exactly equal until about 2060. And then once you get past 2060, however, you see a huge difference. And by 2100, high emissions, that glacier is completely gone. Low emissions, about half of it is left. That's the choice that we have, and we still have that choice to make. So thank you.
Thank you for presenting so many opportunities. Also, the AMI. I think this should be linked to the work plan that we are going to, prepare for the 2025. So please also join our effort when we call for expression of interest, but also, invite us to all these initiatives. After that, one of the things that we realized when we did glacier studies in the Andes, we thought that is okay with the scientific group to publish scientific literature, but when a distinguished delegate representative from Bhutan said that literature is literature, there is something happening in the real ground. So we really went in the Andean countries also to understand how the local population feeling. And that is all translated into Andean Glacier and Water Atlas. We collaborated with Greta Arenda. And this is the center that really brings the scientific literature in a language that policy community also understands. And they recently are going to launch permafrost atlas. And I would like to invite Gustav, who comes from Stockholm University, but also from Greta Arenda, to say a few words how this permafrost atlas and similar work that we are going to do in Central Asia can contribute to international leadership.
Thank you. So I think I'm a permafrost scientist, but I hope and I believe that a year of international glacier year can act as a sentinel year for the whole cryosphere. And Pam already talked about this. We have multiple components of the cryosphere that are vulnerable. The scientific term for permafrost environments is actually periglacial, meaning adjacent to glaciers, which I think also is quite speaking in the sense of the high mountain areas are also characterized by permafrost in the bedrock, in the moraines that buttress a lot of the glacial lakes, etc. So it's all connected. The systems are connected. And the permafrost atlas that you mentioned was launched at the Arctic Circle recently. Uses some excerpts of the art from the atlas actually on the walls here. And if you noted that there are also some posters in the corridor coming in, that where you can also see some more of it. So this is an effort that came to be through EU-funded project called Nunatario, which was a consortium of over 30 universities, and in total 150 scientists contributed to the atlas. We gathered all of the best data we could on the extent, the properties, the vulnerability of permafrost, and then the really expert cartographers at Grid Arendal help put this together to it's really going to be, or it is, a printed coffee table book, but it's also an online resource that's available as both this exhibit that is around here and the PDF of the actual atlas. You can, if you just Google the permafrost atlas, the very first hit will be the Grid Arendal page with these PDFs. And I think it's really an excellent example of how to communicate. I mean, the science can be as good as it wants, unless we really effectively and with good visuals communicate the urgency and the impacts in a way that people really gather and understand. I think we are hard pressed to sort of get the urgency of our message across. I also just want to say a few words on the importance of years or events like this. I started as a PhD student at the same time as the International Polar Year in 2007, and that was a massive gain for the permafrost community, because during that year we got a lot of funding to start long-term monitoring of permafrost. And since then, permafrost has been recognized as an essential climate variable by the WMO. There are networks now in place to study permafrost. Unfortunately, they're not as well funded as they could be, but a lot of the efforts that was made during that polar year, they are still sustained. And those monitoring networks have immense value for the science. And I think that's coordinated monitoring efforts that happen with the same methods, with the same methodologies everywhere, is of immense value to the science. And I think high-level support from organizations like UNESCO, WMO, and others is really needed to sustain and make that happen. Monitoring that is done with different types of techniques by different groups in different places that is not coordinated is of much less scientific value. And I think, and as we are relying more and more on satellite observations to cover the whole Earth, we still need the ground measurements to calibrate and make sure that these satellite measurements are, that they are really giving us the same message everywhere, and that we calibrate to on-ground measurements. So I think this on-site and on-ground measurements and long-term measurements and sustained funding is of immense value to the scientific community, and I hope that's something that we can get out of a year like this.
Thank you, Reggie. Yeah. I think this excellence of Grid Arendal, we did already one exhibition during COP21 in Paris. The exhibition, probably that could be one of the opportunities I like to bring it to the audience interest, and perhaps we can work together. We work with all space agencies, the Japanese Satellite Agency, European Space Agency, NASA, and compared two satellite images of two different timelines. So these picture satellite images told the story, and that was fantastic. We did exhibition of the mountains, natural heritage sites. We can think about something also for the 2025, and that was with the Grid Arendal. Now let's move to one of the funding agency which provided very first Glacier Lake outburst flood assessment in Central Asia. We are actually working. We are understanding how this is impacting Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan, and we are very grateful to Adaptation Fund. So, Mohammed, how do you see this project has been done? It's 1.5 years now already in operation. We are still 2 more years to go. But how do you see, after hearing all these voices, Adaptation Fund's strategy to really support countries in the further 2025 and beyond?
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for the invitation. Actually, it's an honor to be here, not only because of the important issue of the glacier melting, but also because we have 3 of our main implementing entities, ICMO, WMO, and UNESCO. In the portfolio, if you look at it, and you mentioned this project, but we have another one in Pakistan. Those are the only projects that we have on the glacier outburst flood management, and the reason is because this type of issues don't come as a priority to the countries unless we make those issues known by them. And I guess this kind of opportunity is really important, at least to make sure that when they come to us in terms of investment plan, they include some of those issues. Now, the adaptation fund, as the name says, is only on adaptation, so we don't do mitigation. And you mentioned the strategy of the fund. I think what I would like to say is that the adaptation fund strategy is the strategy of the country. So it's up to the countries to decide how they want to prioritize issues which address their adaptation needs. So we have some opportunities, including the country allocation. We have about $20 million that countries can program for adaptation needs, and we really work on the basis of country ownership. It's up to the countries really to decide if the issue of water management, for example, which relates to glacier melting, is something that we want to consider. So from our side, we believe that this kind of opportunity is really important because it puts at the to the countries something that they might not be prioritizing in their strategies. So this one. The second thing that I would like to mention is that the adaptation fund is one of the few fund. I would like maybe to say it's maybe the only fund that has a dedicated window for regional projects. So we have an amount up to $14 million that can support countries to tackle regional issues. And glacier melting is an issue that is it goes beyond one country. So this project that you mentioned is indeed funded by this regional window, and that window has been initially put it as a pilot program up to 60 million. Now it has been expanded, and we have funded about 20 projects now, and the portfolio is about $200 million. And we believe that this is an opportunity for countries to come together to address this kind of issues like the glacier melting. I would like to conclude by saying that the adaptation fund put the local people at the top of the priority. So although we work with national entities, national actors, under the new medium-term strategy, we have made a commitment that 100% of our funding has to address a locally led adaptation. So it means that whatever that is brought to us, we would like to see the local people on the top of the adaptation needs. So we think that addressing adaptation needs at the global level is important, but we need to make sure that the adaptation capacity built on the ground has to be owned by the local people. So that's something that I would like to emphasize, and also hopefully we will be more active on this issue of the glacier melting.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. 2:30, there is a session in which we are going to show some of the preliminary work from the Central Asia funded by Adaptation Fund. So please come here. We have, this is advertisement, by the way. We have a session 2:30. It's about Glacier project. We have two projects and we are going to talk about that. But I discussed with Pam and her team, we can go a little bit further. So we have a time for question and answer. So please feel free to come back to the panelists, ask your question, and then we can create some additional insight for the international community. So floor is open. Yes, please identify yourself.
Yes, my name is Abdul Gafurov, and I'm from science side. So it's over. Thank you for saving some time for questions. So I'm doing cryosphere research in Central Asia, snow and glaciers. And in 2025, Tajikistan is hosting together with other international organizations the year of glacier preservation. And it has been also said from Bhutan and Nepal side, there needs to be more financial support for scientific studies, access to financial resources. My question is focusing on the year of glacier preservation in 2025. Are there any programs or initiatives to be launched for scientific activities? I mean, the year of 2025 is not so far. That scientific community can prepare some products, let's say, focusing on Central Asia or focusing on Tajikistan, which is a lot of glaciers that can be then presented during the 2025 event.
Yeah. Any scientific institution can? I will give you some of thought from UNESCO side, but Caroline,
just a brief reflection on this. Absolutely, I think this is why it's so imperative for us to start the coordination early in the year, next year, precisely to identify and scan what are the key activities that are already being planned that could also be potentially expanded to include other regions or other specific priorities that those particular countries also need to see addressed. So the earlier we convene to try and see this mapping and reorientation of where we can now look to address particular gaps, it's the opportunity we have early in the piece. That is one thing, but also 2024 and 25 opportunities to prepare the proposals and engage in those new questions and substantiating the need for those. And we have also the opportunity to coordinate for the following year as an outcome of the year.
Thank you. Please identify yourself.
Yes, I'm Roxana Borges, assistant professor at the University of Chile and researcher at the Center for Climate and Resilient Research. And you were talking about the future governance, but I would like to take the conversation about the current governance. In Chile, we are trying to protect glaciers for years with a bill that we are not able to pass a law because of the pressure of the mining companies. And now the new constitution, made by the far right, is including the water rights. That means that the private sector can obtain, use, and transfer water, and the water in any of the states they have. So that means that the solid water that is glaciers can be also now, if that is approved, use and transfer. So what happened with the current governance in the countries, and how institutions like the global institution can support and pressure countries as Chile to be more protective in terms of the glacier?
Thank you. I will take a couple of questions before I think, John, you wanted to come.
I need to make my excuses. I'm sorry. I have a meeting, so
I apologize. No, thank you so much. You are.
No, I feel bad.
I've got 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a comment that we have the International Council of Scientific Union, which we mobilize to. So 2 bodies in there of great interest. One is the International Association of Cryosphere Sciences, which is meeting in 2025 along with meteorological sciences and the oceans in the Republic of Korea. The other is the International Association of Hydrological Sciences, which has an International Commission for Snow and Ice Hydrology that is meeting in Roorkee, India in 2025. We have to, as a community, ensure that the international year is on the schedule of these scientific bodies and that the information be collated together for the contributions we give. There's a tremendous scientific expertise around the world that can mobilize these organizations very quickly. UNESCO and WMO have good connections to them already.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, as we are advertising here, and very positively, may I add a mention about the call of President Macron and President Tokayev, France and Kazakhstan, to convene a summit about water by September 2024. That may also be a good opportunity, diplomatically speaking, scientifically speaking, to gather our forces and to strengthen our cooperation in the field of water that is obviously at the very heart of the Glacier question.
Thank you. One more question and then we will go to the panelists. No? Yeah, I will come to the panelists. I don't see from audience. So before I give the floor to Kevin, Kun, you want to take you know the Chilean governance a little bit? Can you come in? Okay.
It's an interesting question, Roxana, thanks for that. And it's a challenging one, I think. It's about frameworks, about vision, about what we want to do with our water resources, how we vision that. Is it a commodity or is it something that we want to preserve? And I think it's not an easy answer to give. I think it depends on the setting. But certainly there is concerns and different frameworks. When we look at Argentina, where they conserve and they protect the glaciers, in Chile, this issue really going in the opposite direction. So I think there's also an opportunity to talk about governance and put that also at the heart of international year, making sure that we put that on the agenda. And we talk about best practices and what really should be the focus. So certainly for people who are there.
Okay, I will go to the panelists, but before that, the science, 2025 is an opportunity for international year, but also 50th anniversary of Intergovernmental Hydrological Program, which really laid out the foundation of science of hydrology, including Cryosphere. So there will be opportunity from each of the member states, ISP National Committee. Please contact your ISP National Committee to propose activities for the 50th anniversary of Intergovernmental Hydrological Program. And we should be working with the scientific community or also with the member states. So let me go to the panelists. Yes, Kevin.
I need to run to another meeting,
Sure.
but before I do, let me just make a sound a cautionary note in terms of the length of time it takes to spin up funding from the global climate funds. And I can't speak for all of us, and perhaps Mohammed would like to supplement my answer. But from GCS perspective, even if a country has got clear priorities for mitigation and adaptation identified, turning that into a full proposal, bringing it to our board and having it approved for funding, optimistically 1 year would be a very good result. So I'm just letting everyone know that in the context of a year for Glaciers, use that year wisely in terms of preparation, because certainly for our fund, developing a proposal fully takes that amount of time. And of course, there's no reason why the year shouldn't be laying the foundations for great activities to follow it, but I would strongly recommend that, if wherever you possibly can, you turn that year into a decade, because the realities of the global funding landscape are it takes that long to mobilize the sums of money required. And with everyone's apologies, I must rush to another meeting. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you very much. Carolina, any final thought? So we just quickly go to 60 seconds.
Just one final thought inspired by the intervention from Roxana. Good to see you, by the way. I think this is also an opportunity for science diplomacy. I think this is a new chance to engage in the science policy space in new ways and support the governance questions and challenges that clearly these regions face, especially in a transboundary setting in which mountains and glaciers are located. I think this is a great chance for countries to come together and collaborate. So it's not just scientific collaboration, but also the nation states also collaborate on common issues. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Ahmed, any final thoughts?
No, I mean, I just would like to maybe to echo what Kevin has said. Although we have funding available, and again, the funding availability depends on the allocation that we receive from the pledge that we receive from donor countries that I would like to ask to have more. But also, it's important to keep in mind that a project preparation can take up to 1 year or even more. When it comes to transboundary, it can even take more. So let's just keep that in mind.
Yes, of course. Isabella.
Yeah, and perhaps just following on that point, so we are working on 2 adaptation fund proposals at the moment. One is going to be focused on GLOF and GLOF risks in Pakistan. It is a lot of work. We would love to be able to move towards regional funding, but there are challenges in that. But we are going to hopefully make that first step. But just in terms of international year, I think it's really important that we deploy the regional mechanism that we're establishing in the HKH. If we do get the HKH Council approved, that's a really important opportunity at ministerial level across our countries to really promote these issues and address some of the governance issues as well, whilst also using science and evidence as our foundation point to make the case more coherent and forcefully. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I guess I can just say that I think that efforts like this it's really a great way to get the cryosphere science broadly out there, and also to get more people to recognize unacceptable impacts that we will see from passing 1.5 approaching 2 degrees to all cryosphere dynamics. It's simply not a future anyone wants to live in. And I think anything that highlights this and helps communicate that science, that solid science, to policymakers and the broader public is something really good.
Thank you, all the panelists. Now I invite Abu to close the session.
Thank you very much, Anil, and also Nicola, for the two excellent high-level panel. And I was very impressed on the contribution. I think the key message is the following. Let's work together, moving forward towards this International Year of Glaciers Preservation. But not only for that, let's go beyond that. And we have very good news following the Polar Summit in France with this initiative of having a decade. And I think we need to have champion countries so that we can all together mobilize to have a General Assembly resolution, which will give more power in implementing and moving forward that international decade, which will give us more time to advance in mobilizing all the energy, addressing this daunting challenge we are facing. And also, even before that, we can also contribute to the international decade on science of sustainable development. I don't know if all of you know that there is a decade which was approved this year in August by the General Assembly for the next 10 years for science for a sustainable development. So we can also, through that window, contribute also to mobilize scientific community. But we have this during the session, not only scientific community, we need to bring all other key partners, particularly communities who are really suffering vis-a-vis the consequences of those melting, to listen to them also, so that all together we can really provide sustainable solutions in advancing and putting, I'm not saying an end, but at least providing a way to address those challenges we are facing regarding the relations melting. So thank you once again, and looking forward to see you in a few 1 hour or 2 hours, 2:30, because we have a dedicated session on concrete examples of what UNESCO has been doing in helping member states addressing those issues related to relations melting. But thank you.
Yes,